Okay, so in this video, let's continue working in our scene, and now let's create the shaders. Let's start finalizing them on our trees and grass and all these elements. So let's scroll down to something close to our scene, maybe something toward the beginning, and then let's start working on the settings here. So first, we can start hiding, so this way we speed up the render while we're testing. So let's hide the shrubs. And then let's hide the grass and the flowers and all these guys, and then also we can hide the rocks. Okay, and then let's see, maybe something like this overview of the trees, and then let's render and see how the trees looks like. Okay, so it's done rendering, and you can see this is the trees, how they look right now with the current shader. And I'm just gonna show you guys a reference. So this is kind of like what we're looking for. As you can see, the trees have like they kind of have a subsurface scattering into their leaves, and we want so the sun's like going through, and we can see it's brighten up these backsides. So we want to have something similar here going on, not as intense as this one because the lighting is different, but we want to have this feeling of the leaves that there is the sun kind of going through them, and you can see the subsurface scattering. And also we want to fix this like really very bright specks on them as well, and see what's causing this issue. So let's start. We're gonna be basically maybe highlighting something like this and then rendering this part. So let's go to the hypershade, and then let's start checking these trees. So these trees, each one of them have two leaf textures that's contributing to the leaf itself, so let's make it more natural. So let's select the leaf, the first one, and then let's start checking the settings we have. So the specular, as you can see, is pretty high, and we don't want to have the specular this high. So let's first turn it off on both, and then let's check and see if this turning it off will influence this result here. So let's make sure we saved, and then let's do a quick render. Okay, so as you can see, it did make the colors more richer, and the trees start to get was before like kind of faded. So the spec was, then we know it was too much. And then let's render this part as well, just to make sure everything is related to the specular. So this way we start basically understanding our scene and then fixing it. So you can see here as well, this totally fixed the issue of these super bright spots that's making the scene look unnatural. And also get us closer to this look of the trees. The green is kind of nice and very visible comparing to before. It was too faded. Now the green is much stronger. So that's something to keep in mind. So we're gonna get back the specularity, but we don't want it to be too much. So let's work on this. So this specularity, it was 0.3. So we want it to be like really low, like subtle, 0.05. Let's see, and then let's increase the roughness. So when the roughness is really small like this, you can see it's very strong highlights. We want it to be rougher, so we can increase it to something like 0.5, and then let's apply these settings. Thus we can copy and then just transfer from one shader to another, since they are exactly the same. So let's make it easy for us. Okay, so let's go back to our render, and then let's select something like that, and then let's delete all these other ones, save, and then let's render this section and see the result. Okay, so before and after, it looks pretty good. So we do have a little bit specularity on it, but not too much that is dominating like this and then taking over. So just a little bit, just enough, because as you can see in the reference here, you cannot really see much of the specularity but subsurface is really visible, so that's something we're gonna be working on right now. So let's go back here to our scene, and this is good, so let's close it, and then let's start working on the subsurface. So as you can see, the base is good. We can actually increase it here. This is gonna make the color more dominant, so we're gonna get more richer. So if we go with low numbers, you can see it's become black. So let's take it all the way to 1. And let's select this one and take it all the way to 1, so we can get nicer, more brighter colors. And then let me show you guys the difference. So if we select this scene, for example, let's delete this one, save, and then let's render. Okay, so before and after, you can see how there is a difference. The color become brighter here. So this is an optional thing. So we can maybe not have it all the way to 1 because it was 0.8, so maybe 0.9 would be good. We don't want it to be too much, so change it 0.9, that will be good. And then let's scroll down now, and then let's go to the subsurface section. So this one is really important because all leaves, as you can see in the reference, it's have subsurface, and subsurface is basically when the light goes through the the leaf or the skin, and you can see what's underneath it, and that's really good. We need to simulate that in our scene, so let's do that. Let's go back, and then let's work in the subsurface scattering or subsurface. So let's first increase it so we can turn it on this way, and you can see here immediately it gets white because the subsurface color is white here, and we don't want the subsurface color to be the same. We don't want it to be like white, we want it to be kind of similar to the leaf itself. So in our case, we want it to be like a green color, something like this, maybe a bit darker. Something that can really enhance the scene. And let's keep it low, we don't want it to be too much. So let's go back here, and then let's select this one, for example, and then let's make sure we save, and then let's render. Okay, so it's done rendering, and you can see it's pretty big difference how the leaves brightened up now much more, and it's kind of getting closer to this leaves here, how they can start to get brighten up, and that's the kind of effects we're looking for. We don't want it to be too much, as we just want it to be like subtle but still enough to kind of, instead of like everything dark, everything gets like brightened up a bit, and it's gonna be looks more natural. So I like this one. We can keep it as it is. Maybe I can tone it down a little bit. We don't want it to be this intense because we're gonna be doing like color corrections and enhancing the colors in After Effects and the compositing. So we just want something to look nice, but then later we can enhance it. Okay, now once we done with the trees, the shaders are pretty good. There's nothing else really we need to do here. The geometry, we already have the opacity plugged in for the mask, and everything here is nice. The specular setup and the subsurface, these are like really important ones. You can apply, of course, a normal map or a bump map if you want to enhance it more, but for our case it's just flyby, and we're not focusing too much. It will do pretty good, and will save us some render time. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, and so let's hide the trees. Let's select the instancer, and then let's hide it, and then let's show up our second instancer, which is the grass. So this grass, again, let's do like just a render now, and then see how it looks like. Okay, so this is the grass now, and then let's save this image. Let's delete the previous one, and then let's save this one. Let's start working on the shader as well. It's gonna be all like kind of the same basically. So let's select the AI grass, and this is the shader, and then it's the same thing. Specularity, let's take a look at it and then see. Okay, so specularity, there's not very noticeable specularity here we see, so we could keep it as it is. It's working. I might even just reduce the roughness a little bit, so let's make it 0, and then let's increase it up. Maybe something like 0.2 to something 0.23, that will do. And then let's scroll down and then go to the subsurface. and then let's turn it on as well, something like this, 0.3. So that should be good. And then let's add the color. Now we want the color to be similar to the grass, so we just want it to be something, maybe something like this. We want it to be a bit desaturated, so it's not too strong. And we can keep everything the same here, and then let's go back, and then let's see, we already saved, so let's select this section, and then let's render. Okay, so we're done rendering here, and as you can see, we have specs here in our render, and that's pretty good, because let me show you in the reference I have here. As you can see, the grasses have a nice specularity here and highlights, and we want to make sure we have that, because it's gonna have a nice reflection. It does reflect the environment, and that's something we need to keep in mind when we're doing the grass. So now we have that. So comparing before, it was like kind of dull, there's no reflections or anything, and now we have the spec enhanced. We can tone it down a little bit, but so far looks pretty good. Will have a really nice feeling once we have all the grass have the same effect. So maybe I could tone it down, like let's go like 50, or maybe like 70. The roughness, let's see, so let's save this one, and then let's render. If the roughness was make it too low, then we can reduce the weight of it, and reduce the roughness as well. But let's see. Okay, so let's see. So it's toned down a little bit. I think that's pretty good. So let's keep it as it is for now. And the subsurface is subtle, but help us as well. So this is all good in the grass. So we just keep going, and everything else here is good. Geometry, we don't need any masks or anything. And this is all good, working well. So let's save, and then let's keep working. Okay, so now let's continue, and then let's work on the shrubs. So let's hide the grass, and then let's go to instancer 3, let's show it, and then this is the shrubs we have, and let's do one render and see how they look like. Okay, so the shrubs are done rendering, and let's delete the previous images and save this one, and you can see it looks pretty good. But let's look at the reference again, and then let's see the shrubs here. So you can see they kind of have also really nice subsurface scattering. When the lights hit them, they kind of really nice and bright. And we want to simulate that, and as well it does have a nice specularity on them. So let's look at our scene again, and then we could increase the specularity a bit, and also definitely we can add the subsurface scattering. So let's go to the shader, and then let's locate that the shrubs. So this is the shrubs that we have, and then let's first increase the color here, the weight to 0.9, so make it more nicer. And then the specularity now it's set to 0.6, and the roughness, so let's increase the specularity like 0.8, and then let's reduce the roughness like 0.192, that's fine, maybe 0.190. These numbers, you can always change them based on the scene, so it's no problem to adjust them here. So let's go back here, and then let's just select a section, maybe the close to the camera section here, and then maybe like something like this, so we get variety, and then let's render. Okay, so you can see before after we have the specular much stronger, and it looks nice, like it have some nice highlights of the specularity, so just give it more life, and we want that. So let's go down to the subsurface now, and then let's turn it on. Let's do something like 40, and then the color, maybe let's start with something, we want something bright, because look at the reference, you can see how bright it gets, a nice green. So we want something like this, we don't want it to be dark. This time we can like cheat it and increase it, something like this. And then this should be good. Let's go back to this scene, and then let's make sure we save this image, and then let's render. Okay, so now you can see it's much brighter. It looks nice, but like really nice how the subsurface, you can see it working, but we wanna maybe tone it down a bit. Maybe it's too much, so let's maybe put it in half, like 0.20, and then let's save, and then let's render. Okay, so yeah, it's much better now. And then one last thing I wanna do is let's tone down the specular a bit. Let's make it 0.7, since we already have the subsurface. It's brighten it up, so we don't need to have too much of a speck on it. So I already saved it. Let's render and see how it looks. Okay, so let's see. The specularity get toned down a little bit, but that's really nice. So we can delete all these images, then compare. This is originally, and then how we increased all the other settings and how we make it feel much nicer, and give it more alive. And of course, always you wanna check the reference, and the lighting will influence also how much of the subsurface gonna be showing. But for us, this looks pretty good, and it looks nice, and definitely much better. So let's move on to the other elements on our scene, and then now we're gonna work on the flowers. So let's do a quick render and see how it looks. Okay, so the flowers rendered, and then let's delete this one, and then let's select this section, and then let's start working on the shader. We can adjust all the flowers all at once. So for the color of the flowers, we can just do basically just change the subsurface. That's the only thing we really need to change. So let's turn it on, and then maybe 16, and then let's take the same color as the color itself. So something like purple, like this. That will do. That would be fine. And then let's go back to this color as well, and then something like these numbers, they don't have to all match, so you can like adjust. So maybe something like that will do. And then for this one, you can turn it on. And then this one, we don't have to give it yellowish, but we can something close. We don't have to give it like white, exactly the same. Okay, and then let's go to the, and this is the roots. Yeah, the roots is we're gonna do something similar to what we did here. And then let's first turn it on subsurface, and then let's give it like a nice green color. Okay, that's good. And then let's go to this flower, to the leaves itself, and then we can maybe enhance, maybe like 860, just enhance it a little bit. And then let's see, let's increase the roughness, because it did look very bright in here, so we don't want to make it too much brighter. So let's tone down the specularity on it, like increase the roughness and then tone down the specularity. And then let's turn on the subsurface. We just want to give it a really subtle subsurface, so 20, and then let's give it a darker green, something like this. Okay, so everything else is good. The only thing we could add other than the mask is a bump map, but so far this will be doing pretty good. So let's save this image, and then let's render and see the influence. Okay, so there was too much highlights in here, as you can see, and then it get toned down. So that's better. We can definitely increase the subsurface a little bit more, the weight basically on it. So maybe this one we can increase it to, so if we don't want to do it too much, maybe something 112, maybe too much, maybe 88, that will do. And then let's go to the roots and increase the subsurface, something like 88. And also in the flowers here, maybe we can have it 40. And then this one is the same, 40. And this one like just increase it 40. These numbers might be still a little bit low, but we can enhance them if there's no like difference. Okay, so let's render. We need to delete this image and compare. So it looks nice. It's like really subtle differences, but we don't need to do too much on these flowers since they're gonna be, like they just basically adding to the scene, to the feeling of the scene, but without really being very noticeable. So this is good for now. Later on, we want to do the final render if we want to do some tweaks, but this is pretty good for now. Then let's keep going, and then let's work on the rocks. So let's select the instancer on the flowers and then hide it, and then let's show up the rocks group. So we want to make sure we are somewhere we can see these rocks. So maybe this scene here, and then let's render. Okay, so it's done rendering, and then let's select this section of the rocks, and then let's go to the shader. And the rocks here, let's work. We want the rocks to be like they have specularity. We want it to basically show the specular of the rocks. So let's see. We want it to show the specularity of the rocks. Now, not very visible. So let's enhance the specularity. Let's increase it. And let's reduce the roughness, something 2.64. And then let's render. Okay, so you can see how the rocks gets more specular on them. It gets brighter, like these sections here. So that's pretty good. And let's see what else we can do. Let's go scroll down to our geometry here, and then let's look at the bump map that we created. Let's select the shader, and then let's click on these input and output connections, and then let's select the bump map here, and then we did tone it down before. Let's put it all the way to 1, and let's go back to the scene, and then let's save this image and let's render. Okay, so tone it increases back to 1. It doesn't really do much difference since it's already the normal map have its already like set up. So it does look good. There's a little bit like washed out toward the top, but that's like from the lighting. And now we don't have any shadows on it. So when we show up the trees and the shrubs, that's gonna influence more the look. So now we're not really getting the accurate results. If we show up the trees and render with the trees, we will get that. But now we just want to get it to look as nice as possible, without worrying too much about the look, about the lighting, like here, because it's gonna be hidden under the trees. So I wouldn't worry too much about these rocks, like in terms of how they look, because they're just like gonna be adding to the scene and enhancing it. Just let's make sure our normal map shouldn't be sRGB, it should be raw. So that's gonna affect significantly how it looks like. So let's save, and then let's render. Okay, so now we're getting much more realistic results. So now you can see the rocks looks much nicer, because we did have the normal map was somehow the color space was set to sRGB, and that was not correct. And now we set it up to raw, and you can see it was really looking washed out, and now it looks have more accurate results based on the sculpting that we did. So this looks pretty good. Now much nicer. Everything here looks much nicer. This is gonna enhance the look pretty good on our scene, make it look natural when we pass these rocks. There's a bit strong highlights in here, so we could address that by adjusting our shader. Let's select the shader again, and let's go to the specular weight. We could decrease this weight a bit or increase the roughness. So let's increase the roughness to 0.4, and then let's save this image, and then let's render. Okay, so it did. Let's see, I like it before, so let's adjust it to 0.260, And then let's tone down the weight, maybe 0.4. So let's save and render. Yeah, that looks good. So we did tone down the specularity, but we still maintain like nice specular and colors here. So that's pretty good. We'll leave it like this for now, and then in the render settings we can adjust to clamp the really super bright spots so it doesn't cause any issues later. So let's close this one, and then let's close this, and then let's show everything. Let's make sure we save. Let's show everything here. Let's show the trees, and then the grass, and then the shrubs. Sorry, not the shrub. We need to show the instancing of the shrub. And then let's show the flowers. So basically this is, we have everything, and then let's save. And then let's render this image and see what it looks like. Okay, so it's done rendering, and let's delete all these other elements here. And as you can see, guys, it looks pretty good. It's like a cinematic, it have a cinematic feeling into it, like more realistic. And you see how with the subsurface scattering that we created, it have really nice like nice scattering and nice like highlights and differentiation in the texture, and that's really help a lot into making the scene looks more realistic. And you can see the lighting how it feels much more natural now, and the sun hitting, and where it hits in the leaves you can see there is specularity showing, and there is these flowers, and everything like this feels nice and smooth and natural. And this gonna help a lot, like make the scene looks really realistic. And especially when we start moving the camera, like rendering the final animation, is gonna look really nice. And as you can see, it's rendered around 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so it's not bad. The quality is pretty good. Like we could use this as a final, but we're gonna like up it much more, and then also increase the render size a bit, because now it's just rendering 960 by 540. It's still HD, but it's pretty good for now. And you can see here the tree trunks looks nice as well, and the leaves, and like everything have a nice smooth feeling to it. And that's a pretty good, that's a really nice way to have the scene lit up and textured and shaded, so it looks really nice and natural. And in composition we can increase, we don't want anything to be too strong in the highlights or the dark, because we're gonna be enhancing the color correction later in compositing. So it's nice to get like something like this, like looks really natural, and then we can enhance it later on if we really need to enhance the color contrast between the highlights and then the darkness. So this is pretty good for now. We're gonna leave this scene as it is. I think we reach a pretty good stage here, and in the next video we're gonna work into doing the render passes and then the final output. So see you in the next video.